What's up, everybody? It's guubums here, and today we're going to actually be doing something different. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a professional player from North America. I've been to World Finals back in Set 6, and I've been rank 1 across every set. I think I'm currently rank 1, at least at the time this is being recorded. But yeah, so today I actually have something a little bit different for you guys. I'm going to be doing a patch rundown with one of the developers at Riot Iniko. And well, I'll let him introduce himself in just a second. But yeah, hopefully you enjoy. And if you do, please like and subscribe. Comment down below on what else you want to see. And let's get right into it. All right, what's up, man? So we're doing the patch rundown. And I guess very quickly, like, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Iniko. I used to be a competitive TFT player. Still play a lot, but working for Riot now. Recently got hired to the game analysis team, which is basically the bridge between the designers of the game and the players of the game. So we just try to help designers reach their goals for what they want for units, traits, stuff like that in a set, and make sure that it gets to the players in a palatable way.
Yeah, so obviously, like this upcoming patch is going to be a big one, especially for like myself and the other competitors, because this is going to be the patch that midset is probably going to be played on. Obviously, there might be a B patch if certain things go awry, but yeah. So why don't you talk about like at a high level, like the stuff you want to hit, I guess, in this patch? Like, what's the most important things that you wanted to do with this patch?
Yeah, sure. So the main thing is we want to make sure that there's a lot of comp diversity. And I think that we did accomplish that in a lot of ways with the most recent patch, 13.15. But there are a few outliers, obviously, that were making the patch a little bit harder to play for some people. So, stuff like Samira, stuff like Zeri, even stuff like some of the legendaries, like Ari, for example. So the main focus was kind of hitting those a little bit and then buffing up some of the underperforming things.
Okay, yeah. So just like going through the patch notes, obviously, there's going to be like certain changes to like portals, for example. I think like a big one is going to be one that was introduced in the last patch. Obviously, I think there was two or three introduced recently. Obviously, there was one that's like kind of like really well received, which is Aaron Mount, I think. And
Mhm.
of course, the big one is Hall of the Nine, right? So I guess talk about like some of these changes that you guys are doing. The portals, obviously, I don't think they're going to be the biggest diff, but obviously when they do pop up, it's going to be pretty important. So.
Yeah, Hall of the Nine, people definitely thought was fun. We're just trying to reduce like the extremes of the variance with it. And then the Yordle portal is moving to Noxus. Is basically just we want to see Noxus portals picked more often, so we can see like Noxus Ryze because he's really cool to play around and just give people a chance to experience that.
Okay, so moving on to kind of like the large changes. Obviously, I think the one that really stands out to, I guess like the competitive players to myself is this Demacia trait. Obviously, I guess probably throughout the entire set, it's been pretty weak, especially since PBE. Like PBE, I think we could both agree that it was like for sure overtuned for a bit. Obviously, that's why it got nerfed. And yeah, why don't you talk about like kind of like the direction for some of these Demacia changes? Obviously, I think we've been actually like changing the champions in the past couple patches to make
Yeah.
them stronger. And I asked you in the past like, oh, why didn't like for example Galio get buffed? And you mentioned like, oh, you didn't want to like you're a little bit scared of like buffing too many of the Demacian units all at the same time, just in case like Demacian became strong. Obviously, that didn't end up being true, so we're kind of like moving forward with this. So yeah.
Yeah. So basically with, along these lines, it's not so much like we're scared of it. We just want to make sure that we don't like reach a state of Demacia is unplayable to now Demacia is completely unbeatable. So we don't want to have like super huge thrash because we have unfortunately seen that in the past and we want to be conscientious about it. As far as this patch though, so the thing that's like really fun about Demacia, like in my opinion at least, is you get like a bunch of radiant items for your carries, right? Like those are always exciting.
Mhm.
The problem is you're not always playing like what people perceive to be like really good units on your board when you play vertical Demacia. And so to kind of supplement that, we want to make it easier to access radiant items for the units that you want to give them to. And as a result, we hit the resistances on the high end a little bit. We made 5 Demacia easier to play all around by giving 5 more armor MR to that one. But all in all, we just want to make it a little bit more exciting, a little bit easier to play, which is, buffing up the units and stuff like that. But like also like trying to keep it in check so that it's not super oppressive. Because comps like Demacia, where it's like high resistance, tanky units, they can be like really frustrating to play against when you can't kill anything on the board.
Yeah, for sure. I think like something interesting that I always brought up was like the resistance thing was kind of like a little bit hard to balance, I think, because I think in
Mhm.
PvE it was giving a lot more. And then something I've always said is that like on 3 Demacia, it's like the 5 resistance almost like you might actually be lowering people's average face by just having it there, just because like people might greed the 5 resistances. Obviously, like lesser experienced players, you'll notice obviously at higher levels where people are not going to greed that 5 armor MR. So it's nice to see that like obviously like for 5 and 7 Demacia, you're going to see like people having multiple what's it called? What elites, I think. And then that'll give like resistances to the entire team, and I think that's going to be like a way to like make the entire comp a lot stronger, right?
Yeah, definitely. With regards to the 5 resistances, like I agree with you actually. For people who are, less experienced with the game, and just kind of see like, oh, this is something the trait's giving me, I should play around it without potentially realizing that, they might be clumping up for some dangerous AoE from other sides. It's just kind of the trade-off that we have to make for giving people a radiant item early in the game. Now, like that being said, obviously up to this point, Demacia hasn't been like crazy good early game, so it's just something where we want to have the excitement of getting that radiant item that you can play around early game because it's super good on tanks and stuff like that, right? And we want to make sure that like the units themselves can be good enough to use it. So trying to keep it out of like get like let's say this number was 10, like get like a ton of resistances early game for your team, like almost unified or something like that. And keep it in the realm of like, okay, cool, I have this radiant item that I can play around for my strong unit, right?
Yeah, and I guess the last question I have about Demacia is that I think like a lot of people
Yeah.
will talk about this or might have questions about this, but specifically for Lux, which has been probably the most played Demacian unit throughout the set. Obviously, in Lux's ear is obviously a big one, but in Stork's right now as well. Is that this Radiant Varello gets rolled, right? So I don't know
Hmm.
if willing. Do you think you can talk about that? Obviously, people like I think in the stats.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Radiant Varello has one of the best stats. Our group was actually trying to figure out why that might be. We really couldn't come up with a good solution or sorry, good like explanation for it. But something like that. Is there like a do you want to talk about that a little bit? Obviously, I think especially some of the not as good players or sorry, the lesser experienced players might like find that like a little bit frustrating. Obviously, when they roll it,
Yeah.
it might like influence their fight too much.
Yeah, sure. I mean, lesser experienced players, I'm not sure they'd be like super frustrated by it. I know that a lot of high level players get frustrated by it, and it's understandable. I mean, the justification is like, it's at least some AP, and it's like anti heal is like whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is, like, can it be removed? Like, it probably could. If it did, though, we'd probably need to nerf Lux like pretty sizably, considering her other options. Like, what becomes her worst option at that point? Like, probably Archangel, I
I was thinking
guess.
Shojin actually, but
Yeah,
it
maybe
depends, right?
Shojin.
Obviously,
Yeah,
right.
because like even Archangel can have its time if a Demacia comp ever does surface, right?
Right, because it's like a tank
Um,
comp in a lot of ways.
yeah, and so probably would need to nerf her a little bit if we ever did that because like Radiant Blue is crazy good, Radiant Deathcap is always nice, Radiant JG, etc. I don't think it's something we're like super opposed to. It's just one of those things where we'd like to focus on more pressing matters. But I'm not going to confirm or deny like it's going to get removed at some point, but I think it's like very, very reasonable to ask for it to be removed.
Okay. All right. Moving on from Demacia, I'm gonna actually skip past the Gunner change. I think it's like a very just small change to 4 Gunner.
Yeah,
Obviously,
sure.
Zeri is getting nerfed, so I think like this is pretty whatever for in most cases. I think this is just a good change in general. Obviously, 4 Gunner kind of like fell by the wayside. Um,
Hmm.
with the rise of like 3 4 Zeri. But like this multicaster and the entire kind of tree is I think it's gonna
Yeah.
be popping up with a lot of people. Like obviously when a lot of changes happen to like a certain tree, people will like especially when it's buffs, people will be like, oh my god, you're buffing a lot of you're just buffing this comp like XYZ amount of times when in reality like doesn't actually matter. Like because you're actually nerfing the trait. So when you buff the individual champions, maybe like it doesn't end up being all that impactful. But Teemo reroll, for example, is actually something that some of the higher elo players are pretty concerned about. So why don't you kind of like talk us through some of these changes?
Yeah, I do kind of share those concerns a little bit. So with regards to multicasters, like you're right, like what a trait nerf, a net trait nerf can be seen as all the units getting nerfed in the trait. And so for that reason, we kind of wanted to break even here, or try our best to basically. It also came with I don't know if it lists it here or later, but at some point you see it in the patch notes. It came with some bug fixes where Vel'Koz's targeting is a lot better. He will fizzle less,
Yeah.
and I think actually he doesn't fizzle at all now. I actually toyed around with it a lot in Sims, so I did not see Vel'Koz fizzling at all. So like hopefully it's all fixed. It looks really good. So that would be exciting for him to get reintroduced back into the meta potentially. And then as for Teemo, so I did a lot of Teemo testing. I would test him. Basically, what I did was 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star variants of the Teemo comp at like appropriate tempos throughout the game against like stage 3, 4, 5 boards. Um, Teemo 2 was kind of like going toe to toe with like a Jinx 2 board or like an Akshan Ashe type, like Deadeye, good frontline board. There's also like an Ionia board and a Sork board that I tried it against. And at these numbers, he was breaking even with a lot of them, which is what we do kind of want because we want Teemo 2 to be an option to click because for the whole, like just being honest, for the whole set, this guy was like deemed unclickable,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um,
Very much a
and
synergy
it's
bot.
it's yeah, and so like you can obviously path into Teemo reroll now a little bit more easily, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that if you're running like avoid Sorks early game and you have a Teemo and you have like a blue buff JG, you can put the items on the Teemo now. Like I think that that's very reasonable. Um, and then as far as like 3-star and 4-star, 3-star was looking pretty good. There were a lot of comps that were able to beat it, and it was able to beat a lot of comps. What it came down to a lot of the time was like whoever's frontline died first, actually, which is like part of the course for a lot of fights in TFT in this set.
Yeah, very front to back.
Um, yeah, 4-star is a little bit concerning. I think 4-star will be really good. We're gonna keep a really close eye on it. The main thing here, and I don't know how much you agree with this, is like the philosophy is the 4-star Yordles, Kled and Teemo, they're already actually quite good, like you said, but they're really hard to
Yeah,
get
they're
to,
really hard
especially
for
this
sure.
patch. Like everybody's holding Swain. It's not that people are playing Teemo, but you do still have to 3-star 3 different units, and a lot of the time these are going to be 2 costs. It's a lot of money. So we kind of wanted to keep like the Yumi curve from set 8 in a way, as far as like spike timings. The only thing to kind of cause for concern right now is like how hard the 4-star spikes. So he could be a god. Again, we're gonna keep a really close eye on it and we'll act accordingly, like whatever we need to do. But yeah, we do at the end of the day just want this unit to be playable and clickable as another out for people who might be in the AP line.
Yeah, I think like reintroducing certain AP lines is going to be really impactful. Obviously, the current meta, I guess, read for the current patch was that like Zeri's obviously the S tier, and oftentimes people are actually unwilling to play AP. I think like introducing units like this, obviously later we're going to get to the Shurima, and that's going to be important, obviously. But very quickly about Teemo 4, something like Setsuko
Sure.
said was that like, especially with Kayle, especially with Tristana, these comps, these 4-star Yordle comps are like, it's really just as strong as like your last leg or your weakest leg is that like
Mhm.
you can have 9 Kales at the start, but pretty much except in fringe cases where people kind of like took a 3-star Kale to try to like level with it to tempo with it. Most of the time people are really just re-rolling 3 units just so that they can get their 4-star Poppy, or in the case of Tristana it'd be 4-star Tristana. And as you said, like this gets very expensive, which is why like I'm personally less scared of the Teemo 4, because even these comps that were Kayle and Tristana, they're rolling for 1 cost, right? But whereas like Teemo, you're rolling for 2 costs, which oftentimes is like a lot harder to hit than 1 cost. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's like good that you guys are keeping an eye out for it. I'm actually not nearly as concerned as a lot of the other top players, but I've yet to really
Yeah.
see Teemo do well. I think even on the current patch, even when they do hit, it's not that strong. I have seen it in some cases, but I think like oftentimes it really requires like a lot of high rolling. So
Yeah, and like the other thing too is, if Teemo 4 is like super godly, it realistically will be Teemo 2 and 3 that can keep that in check because if we lower the numbers on those, he's harder to get
yeah,
to
yeah,
because he'll be bleeding a lot more throughout the mid game. And so just around this Yordle trade in general, less so Kayle, but like it is mostly Yordles. We've kind of been, having conversations amongst ourselves when we're thinking about balancing the game, like how should we approach Yordles as far as like the 2-star, 3-star, 4-star spikes? Like are they just, doomed to be like bad at the lower levels and gods at the upper levels? Like is there a way we can bridge these gaps? So we're always having conversations about it, we're always thinking about it. So I think that going into this patch it'll be really useful for us to learn more about like traits like this.
okay. Moving on then. Shadow Isles. So Shadow Isle 2 buff I think is tends to be good. Very early on, I think in the set people really valued the Maokai Viego opener. I think Viego had since been nerfed. I think this
Mhm.
kind of like busts up that opener a little bit. People kind of like very quickly realized that 6 Shadow Isles was really, really strong. Obviously, Shadow Isle Crown had already been nerfed, but especially with Earth becoming more meta, it's obviously a lot more easy, or sorry, a lot more common to see 6 Shadow Isles. You are still limited by Senna, and I think down below Senna is going to be getting nerfed, so that obviously helps. So I don't know. I don't think there's too much to say about this really, but
Yeah, I mean, just bringing down the ceiling of it a little bit, trying to bring up the floor. We do want it to be like pretty playable. Gwen is also feeling really good, so it's nice to see her on boards this
oh
patch.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think like Gwen is like the ultimate like addition to your board almost. Like I think we can probably both agree that she's not really going to be like the premier main carry in most builds just
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
that's kind of like destiny of melee carries, but yeah, she's definitely really a strong addition to like any Slayer build, any Shadow Isle build is going to really like running her.
yep,
Um
agreed.
I think the next one, okay, so this one I think is actually going to be really important is Shurima. So Shurima, especially vertical Shurima, has been really, really difficult to play pretty much throughout the entire set. The Shurima builds that have seen success are oftentimes like three Shurima just to get like one Ascension on either Azir or sometimes Nasus or Akshan 3, right? When he was stronger. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. I don't think there's really too much to say about this, but like I guess like how strong are we expecting Seven Shurima to really be with these changes?
It's kind of tricky because there are definitely groups of players who think that Seven Stream is already very good. If you look at the stats, which like these stats are publicly available on like sites like Tools or something like that, you'll see that the stats don't match that sentiment. Where Seven Stream is actually performing pretty poorly, especially for a seven piece. I think that part of it is definitely due to the meta. Things can like a lot of your board can die before you can like ramp up because Azir is he wants to be a ramping carry for sure.
Yeah.
Just due to the nature of like his spell and also like Shurima. Um, but yeah, I mean it's also due to the fact that like you're running a lot of cheap units in that board and there's not a lot of like AoE or CC or anything like that until you get to like Cassante, who himself is like a little bit on the weaker side. He has like various like areas that he is like very nichely strong in, but overall it's like Shurima just needs some love.
Mhm.
So hopefully this will make Azir feel a little bit easier to play around. It'll make vertical Shurima feel a little bit better. Um, and that can be like one of those just extra outs for like I don't know, like Placidium or God Willows or something like that.
Okay, and lastly for the large trade changes is going to be Zaun. So this is going to be I don't think this is going to be a very controversial change. I've actually noticed that some of the sentiment on Reddit was like, "Oh, Zaun is now dead." I personally don't think that that's going to be true.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the higher players, myself included, kind of like got up in arms at you guys for not really nerfing Sig Zaun heading into the previous patch, and
Yeah.
so yeah, why don't you talk about some of these changes? I think very quickly the one that stands out to me the most is actually Robotic Arm because this is one of
Mm.
those changes where like when you nerf it by 10%, right? It's like you're not really nerfing
It's
it
a
by
big
like 10%,
difference.
right? Yeah, it's a big
Yeah.
diff, right? Because
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know, it procs on itself. So then like for example, if it was at 90%, then pretty much you're just procking it the entire time. But
Yeah.
yeah, so why don't you talk about some of these changes?
There's also just to expand on Robo Arm once more
Mhm.
is like it's built very often with Rage Blades. So not only is this less Robo Arm procs, it's gonna be like Rage Blades ramping a lot slower as
Slower,
well.
right?
I mean like not a lot slower, but like reasonably, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, like overall, I mean, some looks like some of these definitely needed to happen. Like we all know, like J4 bomb, like that is frustrating to play against for everybody. I mean, it's fun for the person playing it, but
Yeah.
adaptive implant is generally not that exciting, so you want to bump it up a little bit. I don't think it's like terrible. The problem with adaptive to me is it's not robo arm and it's not virulent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what it suffers from mostly.
Yeah, because
Um,
actually, adaptive is really good at six, but oftentimes
yeah.
obviously you need the emblem or some sort of +1 to play six. So yeah,
Right, yeah, exactly. And then yeah, exoskeleton. A lot of people were kind of sad when they would get this one, because it's not
the
chem tank,
explosion.
so
Yeah,
they don't get yeah. So like often when you see your second Zaun mod, a lot of the time it's because you're chasing for Zaun 6, and if they see exoskeleton instead of chem tank, they weren't as excited. So we want to make it a little bit better. We gave it. I think this is like a really huge buff. It cleanses all debuffs. Like partly we had to nerf Urgot a little bit more because of this one in particular. And then like good for like Echo, for example, like a frontline Echo type thing. Good for Warwick. And then obviously like the heal is going up as well. So and then it doesn't trigger when Scion revives. This is one of those things where like I mean it's fun, but it's also like it's frustrating to play against. And also the biggest thing, like to me at least, was it's not very visually clear what's going on
yeah. You
because a lot of
just
the
lose some of
time,
your units.
yeah, like you like so what happens is like you kill the Scion, he's full health, and so he gets the charge, right? But he'll explode not where he died if he got the charge, but at his
Destination.
destination.
Hmm.
And so like you would see the explosion, or like you'd see your units die, like you said, but if you're not familiar with Zaun and like that interaction, you're kind of just sitting there like, okay, well, where'd my team go? Like what just happened?
Mhm.
So it's not the like most visually clear thing. So you're just like, if it's frustrating and it's confusing, we should probably just remove this type of interaction. And it did let us like buff it a little bit more. So I think it's like a net positive overall.
Yeah, for sure. I think especially with the four gunner buffs, we might actually see like the four Zaun four gunner line that we saw a lot more frequently at the start of the set with this exoskeleton. So obviously we understand that like Zarya and Urgot are going to be getting nerfed. We're probably going to touch on that a little bit more later. But I think like buffing up exoskeleton in this way makes it so that when you check your four Zaun and it is exoskeleton, you might be more inclined to play that line rather than sticking to like currently it's just like two Zaun, sometimes like well, it's always two Zaun because you're always playing Urgot Zeri, but like two
Yeah.
Zaun and then like two Gunner. But oftentimes it's like three Zaun, which obviously doesn't actually really matter all that much.
Yeah.
Okay, onto the units. So Kayle has been probably like a controversial unit throughout most of the sets. Like she seems like just like slight nudges here and there just seem to like really push her in one way or a different way. Either she's like really really strong or borderline unplayable, and yeah, so like I think Kayle as a unit is like really tough because when you're not playing Kayle comp, like she pretty much is not taking. She's just like taking up spaces in your shop, right? She doesn't do anything. You
Mhm.
really don't want to pick her up. So yeah, why don't we talk about some of these a little bit?
Yeah. So basically, the goal with Kayle is make her a little bit more viable early game, which is is in line with some of the Demacia buffs as well, to make Demacia like maybe an appealing opener now, hopefully. But yeah, make Kayle like viable early game, and so we also see that when the Kayle comp spikes at level 6, it is pretty like it can be manageable in like stage 3 if you have a good board. Stage 4 though, when it gets like a Gwen and when it gets, like some more of the board online, it's pretty tough to beat. And at the point where, you know, people can win the game on like level 8 KL3 Gwen 2, it's like, do we really want that? Like probably not. Like if you high roll really hard, sure, like it's fine. Um, but we want the win con to be like level 9 KL with like a cool like capped board type thing. We want you to be able to get there at least like a little bit consistently, but you need to be able to like play smart. And you need to be able to like save HP, stuff like that. So the goal here is essentially like make Kayle easier to item hold in some spots, easier to top 4 with, hopefully, and not as easy to overall win with.
Okay.
We'll see how that goes here. Reducing her AoE damage, so she's a little bit weaker in the mid game, and then buffing her single target damage, just so she can kill stuff earlier. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Next change, I can just talk about this one. Orianna.
Oh, the Piltover nerf. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
the Piltover nerf. Okay, so we're I'm gonna ask you about Piltover later, so like
Sure.
don't think
Yeah,
you're off the
yeah.
hook about that one. But this Orianna, we all know that. So like, interestingly enough, like at the start of the set, we thought Orianna was really bad, right? Because
Yeah.
like we thought like anytime she got into like a range v range matchup, she just auto loses, which was true, she did. But oftentimes actually before she got into the range v range matchup in the early game, is that her explosion actually did a lot of damage. Obviously it shielded, and obviously like the chill was not completely irrelevant either. So I
hmm
actually thought like the changes, despite it being like good, probably directionally, just so that she can like clutch up at the end of fights a little bit more. I actually thought it was like overall a nerf, partially because of this exact thing, right? Is it like she's just not auto attacking fast enough after she casts, which means like just her DPS is really really low. I think this is just like a really good change in that sense. But yeah, once again, I
Yep.
will get on you for the Piltover stuff a little bit later on.
Yeah. I
Um,
did. I did want to touch on it like just a tiny bit more. People might be like worried about Oriana because Samira had like a similar like we fixed like her backswing a
oh,
little bit, and this is
mhm.
what caused this meta to occur. I personally don't foresee that being a problem with Ori.
Yeah, me neither.
Just because I mean like she can output some solid damage actually in the early game, and like she has good shielding, but she doesn't scale in a way similar to Samira. So for that, just in case anybody's watching and is like, why didn't they also give her compensation nerfs? We don't really think she needs it. Obviously we could be wrong, but I think it's like pretty safe to just give this like some quality of life.
Yeah, I think Samir specifically, like me personally, if you talk to Sox actually, he thought Samir was
hmm
already the best one cost going into the most recent patch. So like obviously when you buff Samira, after that it's gonna be it's gonna cause issues, and it ended up doing
Yeah.
that. I didn't think she was the strongest. I thought she was the second strongest. So I was pretty sus when you guys buffed her a little bit like that. So I don't think Orianna is nearly remotely in that tier actually. But yeah, so I'm
Yeah,
not
it was.
too concerned.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it was just a mistake. Like pretty much, it was something that, and I think that the root cause of her strength, it's something that I think that like we figured out pretty quickly just watching it, and I think
Yeah,
a lot of challenger players did too. That it's not necessarily her damage; it's that when you give her a blue buff, or like any like casting item really, and she gets these chain casts off with like all the AP from Noxus and stuff like this. She's bringing units into negative armor territory and just like doing ridiculous damage as a result. So
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
we tried to tackle here.
It was definitely the invalidating of tanks that was like really really scary, right? Like I don't think her
Yeah.
ability was doing any damage. Interestingly enough, like people thought maybe IE would be good on her. I was really bad on her. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean IE. Okay, we like IE being bad. It's probably a different discussion. We don't really have to talk about that here. But like even if IE were a good item, it felt like IE probably wouldn't just be good on her, just because like her spell wasn't doing damage, right? It was definitely the second line right here, which is the armor reduction, and it
Yeah.
scaled well off AP. Obviously, Noxus is giving you a lot of AP. That really really kind of like pushed her way over the edge, where like she would invalidate tanks very very quickly, and
Yep.
this is like a directional change. So
Yeah, I
that's the
think that
line.
this just needed to happen. I mean, like stuff like resistance is going below zero is confusing, and you have to do math behind it, and like people like at a glance, it's hard to tell really what's going on. So I think it's a good directional change. You'll see we did the same thing with Lux later.
Flux, yeah.
And then as far as so like people, I did notice just really quick, just people were commenting on like, oh, Samira's Thrash now, she's gonna be the worst one cost. She looks pretty
Probably
good in the
not.
Sims. I
Yeah, probably
mean,
not.
like yeah, like on like challenger boards, for example, like you can still play around challenger early game and it'll feel nice, I think. So my hope is that she'll still be clickable. I think that it looks okay.
I mean, something that like I'm happy about personally is that like you guys didn't just like put it punch in the second line. I guess the third line as well. Like these two lines. Like I think this
Yeah,
this is like something that's actually super super relevant. Obviously, like
yeah,
when you put stuff like DB on her, which is like you can expect her to be a good DB holder, right? For example, and like even stuff
hmm
like Last Whisper, which is giving you like 20 AD, Noxus is giving you some AD, certain augments that are giving you some AD. I think Samira's gonna actually be completely fine in the early game. She's just not going to. Pretty much like you'll actually need a Last Whisper if you're fighting a real tank instead of just like
yeah,
oh I put two Samiras on my board, and I mean, your Bramble Swain 2 is just dead.
yeah. She's not going to rip through everything just as easily, but she'll still do decent damage, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's like Samira being a Thrash is all that justified of an opinion, but I guess we'll see.
Yep.
Okay, next up, the two costs. Okay, so Ashe actually is an interesting one. So I've seen you guys like buff and nerf well, mostly just buff Ashe throughout the set, and I've always kind of like been telling you guys to like hold off on these buffs, just because I
Yeah.
think Ashe, her utility is like a little bit really really strong, right? I would say, especially
hmm
after the most recent change that allows her to hold Morellos. You guys are touching on that a little bit. The second line is obviously a big nerf to that. Um, yeah, I guess like talk about these Ashe like I guess carry changes more so.
Yeah. Sure thing. So essentially, the goal here is we don't want her items to always be like Shojin Morello Last Whisper. And that's just what it is right now. Like those are I don't know if those are exactly her most popular items like listed on sites or whatever, but just if you look in high low lobbies, like
Yeah,
those
those are
are
for sure
very
her
common
best
items that you
items.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to, they'll still be good, but we're trying to give people who want to carry Ashe a little bit of their time in the spotlight. So the idea here is a little bit more base attack speed, which like, you see 0.7 to 0.75. People who aren't so familiar with how these things work might think like, oh, well, that's not that much. It's just,
That's a big buff.
0.05 attack speed. It's sizable, right? It's good. It's a good buff. So, if you want to build like Rageblade or Runons or something like that, hopefully you can have some fun, try and carry Ashe. Hopefully her autos do a little bit more. And she still does a little bit more damage with her spell. It's really just hitting the utility side of her and trying to make her carry potential a little bit better.
Yeah, I think like this nerf is going to be like the most important one. Obviously, in a lot of these
Yep.
Morello, I guess like if you want to talk about it like this, like throughout the entire set has been really really tough to build, and some of it was
hmm
because of that the pre-system change where like 80 damage couldn't spread Morello, and since that's been a change, then obviously since then Ashe has been a great holder of Morello. In a lot of these comps, Ashe is a better Morello holder than Lissandra. I don't know if you guys actually want that to be the case. I don't know if this puts. I think that this might actually like push the needle towards back towards Lissandra, just because like 3 autos cast versus 5 autos cast is like a big deal. Oftentimes you can't really afford to like force a Shojin on her. Like we agree that like putting Shojin Last Whisper Morello is good on her, but like nobody's going to like prioritize a Shojin on like a utility bot, right? Or like this, I guess you would, but maybe not one of like this low level, maybe.
You can't always do it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have them be like roughly equal in terms of utility, probably like more leaning on Lissa's side because in AD comps she is meant to be more utility. And then like, in like Invoker comps she can index more into damage with like Archangel, Gunblade, whatever alongside Karma. But yeah, I mean, like I think there's nothing really wrong with equalizing their utility at the worst and like swinging it more in Lissa's favor at the best. So I think it's I think it's going to be a healthy change overall, and hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to play Asriel. Like Bryce tried it in tourney, got a second. He had like the golden spot for it, and he was able to get a top 2. But we'd like it if he was able to play for first sometimes in those spots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually tried to Ashe roll myself, and I mean, I actually sent it to you, but it's like it's okay. It just feels like it's not Ashe 3, it's just Ashe 2. Like Ashe 2 feels really strong. So yeah. All right, Galio buff. I mean, we don't need this is pretty much just necessary. This unit is kind of suck.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think he's played often, right? Because in Invoker comp, you will always play him. I think this just like lets you use him much more like a Swain. So in the current patch, obviously Swain is like the premier 2-cost frontliner. Maybe you can make an argument for Kassadin instead, but I think most people definitely agree that like for a pure frontline, Swain's gonna be the best. I think like this kind of like pushes him in that direction. I don't think he's gonna be like broken by any means, really, but yeah, just a good change probably overall.
Yeah.
Kled, kind of whatever to me personally. I don't know. Like, what do you? I guess.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
I mean, it's definitely not as crazy as Teemo. I don't know if the thing about Kled is, I still think his comp is good if you can hit it, but it just comes back to the thing where like it's so hard to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's going to be enough. We'll see. It's always possible Kled needs some more love, and we're not opposed to doing that. So.
Okay, and then Swain. Okay, so this is a big one. Obviously, Swain has been the I think like weirdly enough, whenever you guys change Swain, like everybody's like saying, okay, Swain is like completely unkillable now. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like Swain wasn't the best 2-cost frontline in the current patch, but how much of that actually had to do with Swain being like super strong versus like units like Samira existing, which you could just tie the 3 together immediately. And obviously Sorks is pretty strong. Like I'd say Malzahar is probably the second strongest backline 1-cost.
Yeah.
So talk about these Swain changes.
Okay, so here was the goal with Swain. We want him to be an option for Sork's late game along with Taric, because your frontline a lot of time when you're playing Sorks is going to be like Taric, Swain, and J4. And that's not always true in like Hilo, for example, where people can find like creative front lines and like drop down to play more valuable units, stuff like that. But there are situations where like that is your board, and we want to make it at least like playable, because like at a certain point when the Sork board's front line is so bad, it means that the backline damage has to be good for it to keep up, and we don't want to just give these backline Sorks a million damage. And so the goal here was make Swain 2 a little bit more stable into the mid game, make Swain 3 hopefully better in the late game, and kind of separate him from Taric a little bit from just super tank and super tank to like now he can do some damage himself as well. And I think that like the results of it was like, yes, Swain 1 and 2 were really good in Sage 2 and 3, but like you said, like I think a large part of that was a lot of the time if you were going up against the Swain, Samira, Cassio comp in Stage 2, your frontline was just dying first, and you didn't have a chance to like be able to burst out the Swain.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and this is obviously not to say that Swain is not very good. This is just like you said, like it swung too far in the direction of that comp. So we're just trying to address that here a little bit. So this is why you see, his 1-star is like pretty considerably nerfed. His 2-star is nerfed a little bit later, and then his 3-star is actually buffed. We're trying to keep like the scaling good on the 3-star. Still not sure if this is really going to be enough for a 3-star Swain. Like hopefully it is. We are like exploring other things, trying to like see if we can help him a little bit in the late game. But for now, this is what we're doing, and hopefully he'll still be a pretty decent purchase.
Yeah, okay. I personally am skeptical that I'll ever go for
Yeah.
Swain 3, like intentionally, I guess.
Yeah.
But overall, I do think like probably nerfing Swain's like a pretty good idea. I would have liked to see how it looked like with Samira nerfs in place, but I think like this is fine. I don't think these nerfs are like particularly big anyway, so we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
I was never as worried about Swain as like I'm sure a lot of other people were. These changes or whatever, we kind of already went through this. All right,
Mhm.
Garen. So yeah, I mean this unit is pretty much known in the high elo player base as like aside from maybe Tarek in the past and like Teemo before the boss, like this guy was the worst unit in the game, right? He's in that like trifecta of terrible units that you can't pick up almost.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for our lad. As interestingly enough, like apparently there's
Th-
Garen comps that are
there is
popping
one,
up.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's funny is we actually internally called it at the beginning of the patch. We were like, man, we're buffing Garen, like Master Yi Garen with pumping up and Gotta Go Fast. Like these augments are like insanely good for him, especially Gotta Go Fast because he's like just always spinning and he's always like zooming to the next
Yeah.
target. And we're like, oh man, well, and the conclusion was like, well, you know, if he's playable, he's playable, and that's like a good goal to have. And so it turns out he wasn't really that playable this
Yeah.
patch. But here hopefully again like 3-star didn't change, um, except for like overall Demacia changes, I guess. But like essentially the goal is he's a little bit more appealing in the early game. So maybe if you get a double Garen out of a blue orb in stage 1, you're like, oh nice, I can play around this guy. Maybe I have a rage blade. Maybe I can give it to him, or something like that.
Mhm.
So hopefully people want to pick him up now.
Okay. Okay, so this change is actually something I haven't heard any of the high elo players talk about. I know it's like a compensation buff just because like over here, you guys
Yeah,
nerfed like 6 Shadow Isle. But this change
yeah.
actually scares me a little bit, right? Because I think I know you guys are nerfing Trickster's Glass, so I'm sure we'll get to that later. But like
Mhm.
Trickster's Glass Tilia, or sorry, Trickster's Glass Kalista 2 and 3 and 1 actually at various stages in the game is really, really strong. Even just like playing two with like 2 challengers in, 4 challengers in, like however you want to like construct the board. There's obviously a lot of different boards you can play. Scares me a little bit. So I think this one might need a little bit of a watch just because like Kalista 3 already is probably blowing up like frontliners really, really quickly. And I think that especially the 3-star is getting a really, really big buff. I don't know if you've heard any, I guess, like discourse about this amongst the high elo players, but why don't you talk about this a bit?
Yeah, so it's like close to it's like a little bit over a 10% buff at every level. So essentially here I agree that Kalista is good. The problem is, like you mentioned, Trickster's Glass is getting nerfed and Shadow Isles is getting nerfed. And so she's not completely bound to Trickster's Glass by any means, but if we're nerfing this item, we are nerfing its users. And so if you're having to sacrifice a slot to play an extra Kalista, like just 2 regular Kalistas, no Trickster's Glass, then like I think that's fine. Like you're giving up a slot for it. If we don't want Trickster's Glass to feel bad on her by any means, so I think that we wanted to buffer up like a little bit. Also, she's single target, and so like yes, she can blow up front lines, but into the late game with like some of like the more strong front lines and like all the CC that happens, it can be hard for her to find her place. Um, like Yasuo and Kaisa can definitely help out, but we want to make sure that Kalista 3 is like a viable chase option for people more often. And maybe in like a Bastion comp as well or something like that. We want to give her a chance to shine.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this lands well. It is something we're keeping our eye on for sure. And then there's always like the frustration of like, oh, I have a million spears in this guy and she didn't pull. So
So you
like,
just didn't do anything, right? That fight.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so because of that she's very she can be very feast or famine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit unfortunate, but yeah, I think it's like relative. It's not like a super small wolf. It's like relatively small. But we do have our eyes on it for sure.
Okay. All right. So Sona, I won't even talk about. Like we already kind of like talked about it a little bit. She's just getting like a
Yep.
compensation buff.
Yep.
Same with Vel'Koz. And then like okay, so this is like something I want to ask you. You alluded to it earlier. Obviously, this guy's not fizzling.
Mhm.
Like this guy's fizzling a lot less. But okay, so this change right here, if the target dies while the missile's in flight, the missile will travel to that location before splitting. So in a lot of other units, what will happen is that if the target dies, it travels to a different unit. Like, did you guys find
Mhm.
that that might be like too strong? Which is why like you chose to go with this, which is it is still much better than what it is right now, which is like it disappears. But yeah.
Yeah. So we found that it's definitely strong. But in addition to that, it can get really I don't know how much you like value this type of thing, but it can get really visually confusing as well.
When it just like
And
curves
we
from
don't want
there.
to make fights like super chaotic and hard to follow. Sorry, what did you say?
Or like I was asking, like in terms of like visual clarity, like you're saying when it
Yeah,
like curves, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like we don't want it to like go all over the place. So we felt like this would be like a pretty happy medium. Um, and again, like from testing it internally, I thought that I am somebody who likes to play Vel'Koz a lot. I played him a lot before this patch. And I was often like pretty frustrated when he would fizzle and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so from testing internally, I was like, okay, this looks like way, way, way better, and I think he'll be better to play. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just a nice like quality of life like bug fix type thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
obviously we adjusted him accordingly.
Yeah, I think
So
I mean this
multicasting.
this one's like a big one, right? Like where
Yeah,
it'll follow the initial target. Just like the worst thing was like when a unit would literally just move. Like oh, like you
yeah.
finish killing your front line, your Vel'Koz ults and just doesn't do any damage. Like I don't know.
I
That's
mean,
obviously not very cool. And I'm sure you
you
know
play against a challenger board, and they're all like
they're all
up to your
dash all over
back
the
line,
place.
and he's
Yeah,
just firing in the middle of the board. So
yeah,
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 like
exactly. I'm like a little bit worried about Vel'Koz. Certainly, I'm more worried about Vel'Koz than Teemo, but I'm sure you guys.
yeah.
This is like one of those units that you will have your eyes on. I'm sure.
We didn't buff him as much just for the reason that multicaster got nerfed, so like that
Yeah,
was to
yeah, for
offset it.
sure.
But also we want to make it so that he's Sork and multicaster. We don't want him to be like all the way fully tied to multicaster.
Hmm.
We want him to be like at least somewhat playable. And Sork's like two multicasters, sure. We don't want it to be like, okay, well I don't have four multicasters, so I'm never carrying Vel'Koz.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, like currently I play him decently,
Hmm.
often because I play a lot of Sorks. I think you can go for 3 stars Vel'Koz out while playing like just the standard Sork board, which is like 6 Sorks mostly, and it's pretty good. So I guess like now it's gonna be much more of a decision between like in the past it was like always for multicaster. Right now it's never for multicaster. So you could probably like split it half and half more, and I think that's these changes are gonna help with that.
Yeah.
All right, on to the forecast changes. I think the big ones are gonna be Aphelios. Obviously, this
Yeah.
is yeah. I mean Aphelios and actually Yasuo. So why don't you
Yeah.
guys when I guess get started with Aphelios? I think we talked about Lux already. It's not too big of a deal, but
Yeah. So there's actually it got omitted from the patch notes, but I do believe it made it into the game itself. There's another change here, which is Aphelios's mana. I think his max mana was decreased. Okay, honestly, off the top of my head, I don't really remember. It's either his max mana was decreased or his starting mana was like his starting mana pool was increased. Essentially what we want is we want him to be able to like start ramping up a little bit earlier and start doing damage a little bit earlier. Um, because like right now, you go to a fight and your whole board's dead by the time you have like 15 Rage Blade stacks or something. And that's just not fun.
mhm.
Um, so we want to make him a little bit more playable in that aspect, and also like in a lot of metas so far where it's been like very level 7 centric, he's had a hard time kind of like stabilizing. So he is pretty good at level 8 right now. He's hard to win with compared to Zeri,
For sure.
but hopefully this helps things a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, and we're also like hitting Urgot, and so like the goal of hitting Urgot was to kind of hit the Zeri comp a little bit, but at the same time that does also hit Aphelios, so you had to give him like a little bit more in compensation.
hmm
Hopefully it turns out to be net neutral. And then as far as Yasuo goes, so yeah, I agree. This is a really big change for like this late into the set, in my opinion. Like comparable, or rather, when we compared like previous sets, I don't know if like we've had like reworks like this at this point, but I think that this is actually something that needed to happen because this dichotomy of you're wrong side and you die, or your right side, it's like a you 50-0 them or you get 50-0,
yeah, yeah.
right? And that's like never fun. And so like removing the RFC interaction, obviously he's going to become a lot worse. Uh, and it's not that he can't succeed without RFC right now, but you do notice the change. And you need a lot more combat strength in the board setup to get around that. So we gave him some good compensation. He had like really bad AP scaling before, so we tried to like bump that up a little bit, um, as well as like his AD ratio. And then just to make sure he's not just like keeling over, we gave him a little bit of health on top of that. Like Urgot and Gwen, I think, have more base health than Yasuo, which is like a little bit weird. I mean, he has Ionia, which is kind of sustained, but a lot of time you're just playing through Ionia. But yeah, basically it was just compensation buffs for the RFC nerf, which was like a core part of his build. This is another thing that we are keeping a close eye on if he winds up being too good, because as you know, like Yasuo with like 2 combat augments and challengers is still pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Even though Kai's doing like a lot of the heavy lifting there. But like this on top of the Kalista buffs, like could be kind of scary. So
Yeah, my main concern
definitely
was
something we're
like
keeping an eye on.
social distancing, right? Like, obviously, I
Yeah.
think we all understand that social distancing is like bar none the single best augment challengers can really receive. And I guess like buffing his AD ratio and AP ratio to me, like, obviously in conjunction with the Kalista buffs, like is a little bit scary. Like it's hard to say, right? Like if he's not blowing up your backliners, like how effective is he at like doing his job, right? Because oftentimes like the way challenger fights would work is like Kaisa like peppers down the entire team, whereas like Yasuo just starts working on backline very early, and that's just how challengers win fights. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to like understand how these changes work without like actually playing through it. So
Yeah. And
I'll
challengers too is like really thresholdy, right? Like
mhm,
if you are not able to kill that first unit
to get the
relatively
reset. Yeah,
quickly into the fight, it's going to be hard. Um, so yeah, I mean, we're just trying to give them a little bit back for what we're taking from them in the form of RCL. So again, he could be really strong. We just want to kind of wait and see it out and address from there if we need to.
yeah. Okay, sounds good to me. All right. And then I guess Shen, is this like a meant to be a nerf? I mean, I know the answer, but is this meant to be a nerf,
Yeah.
or like what type of change is this meant to be for? Because like obviously
Yeah.
this is gonna affect in some ways the challenger comp as well, depending on like
Mhm.
if you play Shen or Set. But obviously I think the higher cap version is to play Shen. So
Yeah. So this was our goal in trying to make Shen a little bit like a tiny bit worse in like the quote unquote Shen comps, as we like to call them,
mhm,
which is like, Invokers or Ionia or something like that, or like I don't know, like Shadow Wild Shen or something.
mhm,
10% nerf to DR. Remember, this does scale with Ionia in terms of, the higher you go on Ionia, the more damage reduction you get because it multiplies off of it. And then give him a little bit back in terms of the shield, so that if you don't have Ionia in, he maybe doesn't feel like he's just made of paper now.
mhm.
If you're playing like Aphelios or something, you just have like a Shen front line.
Yeah, Shen
Because
carry.
Sedge got a really nice buff in the past, and she feels a lot better as a front line, and now Shen has kind of fallen to the wayside as a result. So the long and short of it is we just want to make Shen a tiny bit more killable in his unkillable comps and a tiny bit less killable in his very killable comps.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean I think this is a good change. I mean the Shen comps things like I say that all the time, you say that all the time, so it's a very almost like obvious thing, but this seems like a
Mm-hmm.
good change to me. Okay, Yasuo, Zeri, and I think this is probably where I'm gonna, let you talk about Piltover a little bit as well. So
Sure,
Yasuo
yeah.
and Zeri nerf, obviously these are
Urgot?
oh sorry yeah, Urgot Zeri nerfs. Just like these need to happen regardless of like pretty much anything. So I'm happy to see them getting nerfed. Um, I guess like the elephant in the room is that like a lot of high elo players, myself included, are talking about Piltover, and like one of the most obvious things is that Piltover did not get nerfed. Like Piltover the trait did not get nerfed, but
Yeah.
we understand that like nerfs to Zeri, nerfs to Urgot, and buffs to Orianna is a nerf to Piltover. Like however much you want to like call it that, like a nerf to
Yeah,
Piltover
yeah.
is its own thing. But like why don't you guys talk about like the team's like philosophy about Piltover, and like obviously it is warping at high elos. I know like for example Reddit is really really up in arms about this. Personally I find that to be because like it's actually quite easy to replicate high elo players playing Piltover as long as they can see it once. But I don't think Piltover is like the scourge that it is at high elo at lower levels of play. Like is that right?
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of these points, and I want to kind of break stuff down individually. So this might be like a little bit lengthier topic. Um, so here's like the baseline thing is like Piltover, we can all agree when you play it is really fun.
Yeah,
And like
for
cash
sure.
out trades like this are fun. So they're like some kind of cash out trade is usually going to be in game. Um, that being said, with Piltover, we are addressing it by hitting the main comp that benefits from it, which is Zeri Urgot, and you saw it also like in the Zaun nerfs, or rather like really readjustments, just trying to make like the ceiling a little bit lower. And we'll get to it later, but like some of the 5 cost adjustments as well. Um, and so what the conversations that we had boiled down to was, and let me go through the whole thing, is Piltover is really strong when you cash it out. You stabilize, you can cash out really easily, and then you're just good for the rest of the game. And so a lot of you guys are saying, well, why didn't Piltover, like, why didn't the cash outs get nerfed? And the reason is if we nerf this and the cash outs at the same time, we run the risk of, somebody gets 2-1 Piltover and they're like, oh, well, this sucks now. And they just don't even want to play it, which is not a good thing for one of the most exciting traits in the game.
Right.
And so we don't want to hit it super heavy right now. We want to see how hitting the stabilization and the path ability works and then go from there. Because I know that you really support this theory of you can cash out with like a Sorc board and pivot into Sorcs. You can cash out with a challenger board and pivot into challengers, or not like a challenger, but like a challenger adjacent board and pivot into challengers. And like honestly, like
sure,
yeah, and honestly, like good. Like that's really I'm glad you can do that. We don't want it to be only tied to Zeri. So, if that's true, at least it's like a little bit more skill intensive. And obviously, like the cash out's not being nerfed, those play patterns won't be as affected, but it requires a little bit more mind share. It requires you to, at least think about how you want to stabilize, stuff like that. And so the other conversation that we had was like, at the point that we want to nerf the cash outs themselves, how do we want to do it? And we actually did at length discuss this, like on the balance team. I'm not gonna share like any of the overall thoughts, just in case they don't want anything to be like revealed. But I can share like my thoughts on it, and you can feel free to agree or disagree. Where like I think that Piltover like before 20 power is like pretty fine, and honestly like even 20 power itself is like probably
like okay-ish.
Yeah. And then when you get to 25 and 30 power, that's like the sweet spot where it's like, whoa. Like,
and it's too easy. It's like that's like one of the discussions we ran into a lot. Is like the 25 and 30 is like too easy for how much it gives. And then like someone suggested, I can't remember who, is that like the one following 30 power, I don't know what it is, maybe it's 36, I don't know. Is like too weak for like, because like by then you're doing like a 10, I think. And that 10 is hard. But like 8 and 9,
because that's when 4-1 is rolling around.
Yeah,
other people are like definitely stabilizing.
Right.
And so part of it is the meta, right? So like 3-5 and 3-6, if you've been opening the whole game, you're saving a lot of econ, and you're able to spike your board a lot harder than other people are at that point in time. And so that's why it's like easy to cash out, and those are like really good cash outs as well. So this is why like like right here we want to make it a little bit harder to cash out. Going back to that point, but yeah, just going back to my conclusion was like, okay, so like 6 and before, fine. 7 and 8 cash outs are too good, and that is where like I would tone down, the gold amounts and stuff like that. But we want to keep. I think it's 7 and 8. I could be wrong on it's 25 power, 30 power is like the is what I'm trying to get.
I believe that's
and then
8 and 9. I think
8 and 9. Okay, I'm sorry. So 8 and 9 cash outs are too good. My mistake. 8 and 9 cash outs too good and too easy. Want to make it a little bit harder and then see from there. It's possible we tone down the gold, but we want to just kind of look at it first. And then 10 plus, like we were mentioning, we want 10 plus to be exciting. Like we want this to be the area that people can like win out from, as long as like they don't, just AFK the rest of the game or something like that. Like we still want you to be able to like play, but we want these to be exciting. We want these to be fun, and we want these to be like the 1 or 2 lives. Like, oh shit, am I gonna win? Am I gonna die? We want it to be like that kind of thing. Because when you're like 8 and 9 loss, like often you have like 3+ lives sometimes, and that's not particularly exciting. It's just easy, and it's not fun to play against. So.
Yeah, okay, so I want to touch on this a little bit, because like you guys are going to get pushback on this, and I'm going to be one of the people giving you guys pushback on this, but because you said like, okay, you don't want people to run into the scenario where they hit 2-1 Piltover and they're like, you know what, I'm not even going to play this, right? And like that's completely understandable. Like nobody's like, we all agree that Piltover is the most fun trait. There's there's no disagreements from anyone there. I guess like where like I kind of differ from you is like at the top level. No matter what, like, okay, so if 2-1 Piltover isn't strong at the top level, I think that's actually fine, right? Like, I don't think we realistically care about, like, the top level all that much with regards to, like, something like that. But, like, I think no matter, even if Piltover were to be a little bit weaker, I argue that, like, I think the casual players will still play 2-1 Piltover, even if they know, I don't think they will know, but, like, I think even if they know it won't be, like, the giga win out that it is currently, they'll still play it, which is why I and a lot of other top players will, tell you that, like, I think, Piltover should have been nerfed anyway, right? So yeah. I guess, what do you think about that?
No, I mean, that's for sure a valid point. And I think that the next goal from there is, like, in the first place, we should make it not so tied to 2-1 probably. which is like another conversation in entirety. But like, no, I think that that's definitely a valid point that you bring up. Again, the main idea here is like we want to avoid like super thrash, and we just want to see this first. I am not going to discount the possibility that Piltover will still be too good. But like I said, we want to get things right for mid set, and so we're going to take a lot of this patch as an opportunity to very, very closely observe, and make sure that we're hitting like what we need to hit.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's... Okay, actually, just as a final point...
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, hold up. I kind of forgot what I was going to say. Oh, wait. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, just so that the viewers or, like, Reddit doesn't crucify me, I still think Piltover needs to get nerfed. I know, I made that clear, but I'm going to make that more clear. Anyways, yeah, we can move on, because, like, I mean... Yeah. Piltover is kind of unfortunate for us high elo players. Alright, moving on to the 5 costs. So 5 costs have been like kind of like a big point of discussion for like throughout the entire set. I think early on, I definitely got really mad about people saying this, but like people were like saying, you need to buff 5 costs, you need to buff 5 costs, you need to buff 5 costs. I personally think you actually need to buff like the one you need to buff, the only one you actually need to buff, you guys didn't buff. And I know the reason why, but I guess like let's talk about these 5 costs, right? Sure. Aatrox is like I don't know if you know what like the Soji group calls it, but like the tri-press event, which is like Aatrox, Heimerdinger, and Senna. You just put them on your board, no items, and they make your board 10 times stronger. I mean, obviously Heimerdinger you actually have to pay for it, but like especially the other two, so like you put them on your board and you're already like 10 times stronger with no upgrades, no items.
Yeah, I mean Aatrox, like I've heard a lot of things, a lot of memes about him, like, oh, he's transfusion to the unit, or he's 4 bruiser the unit, or whatever.
Yeah.
So the goal here is pretty obvious. We want to make his utility a little bit worse, and we want to make his carry potential a little bit better. So World Ender, his spell, will last a little bit longer. This is mainly to hit when he revives, because a lot of time he'll revive, he'll cast, and then like he'll either die right away, or he'll lose, like, or he'll like run out of his ult. Which is like pretty unsatisfying. Like if it's like towards the end of the fight, you want him to like basically have it for the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And then this is like towards the other change where he's immune to damage and untargetable when respawning, because he does this whole like ceremony, and it's really cool. Like it's visually appealing, but you're just looking at it, like you're just looking at him, and you're just like, okay, my guy's just standing there, like he's just dancing around, and then he'll just die.
Yeah.
And it's really, really frustrating when you're actually trying to itemize him. Interestingly enough, a lot of players have raised concerns. A lot of good players have raised concerns about this. Weijin is one of them. I think.
I mean, I'm one of them.
Yeah. So about like his carry capabilities, because they're saying like right now he's already really good.
Oh, I'm not saying that. But
so
okay, yeah, maybe they're saying that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what they're saying is right now if you put 3 items on him, he's already really, really good. We're not really seeing that, and so we want to move the needle a little bit in that direction regardless. I mean, his 1-star is still going to be like pretty squishy, but his 2-star, like by the time you get the board online, will hopefully at least be satisfying to play around.
Yeah, I actually personally probably would have liked to see Darken nerfed like even more. Just like honestly, if like this height gets hit a little bit too hard, and I'm wrong, then I think that's fine. Like I would actually nerf this to like maybe 300. I think 50 actually, like 400 to 350 is a big nerf, because like the power in Aatrox, it bounces like to like 5 units, right? And when it bounces to 5 units, you're getting like 2k HP. Obviously, you're down 250 from that if it happens. Also, this duration thing, I didn't even know this existed. I play this guy every single chance I get. I still didn't know this existed until like
we know the reason
you
don't know it existed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to Ahri. Widely considered the best carry in the game for obvious reasons.
Yeah. I mean, this needed to happen for
sure.
Like
I think this one's the big one.
is, definitely.
I think
like the Mana Reeve gives
you
a little bit more counterplay potential, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a big frustration point for a lot of people, where a lot of the time they weren't even like they didn't even care about the damage that much. If you look like at random comments online, or like at just stuff what people are saying, they're just like sure, like she does damage, but like, man, this Mana Reeve, like I can't even play against it. She just stalls the fights so that she always gets her cast off, stuff like that. So hopefully this makes it a little bit more palatable to play against without like completely killing it. I think she'll still be pretty okay.
Yeah, okay. And I think this next one is going to be the one that you might have to talk about a little bit. I know like at the high elo player base, like this caused a lot of I don't want to say outrage, but maybe like outrage amongst some of the high elo players about this, because like I think we agreed that like I think in the stats, Bel'Veth is also going to be the worst 5. Okay, not counting Cassante. I don't know. Okay, I have to put a disclaimer. Anytime I'm talking about 5 costs, I tend not to actually even think about Cassante. so like if I'm saying a 5 cost sucks or a 5 cost is broken, I'm not even thinking about Cassante. But yeah, okay, so Bel'Veth is in the worst in the stats aside from Cassante.
Mhm.
And that's partially because like her 1-star, especially with no items, is not really doing anything. Her 1-star with like 2 items starts to get really strong, especially if you have like the really good items on her, which is like Edge of Night and Challenger Spat or Ionia Spat are like the 2 big spats, and then RFC obviously. And then once you get to like 2-star with 3 items, I actually had a game in tournament where like I had 3 item Bel'Veth and like she didn't even proc. I had GA on her. She didn't even proc GA like a single fight. I lost 1 fight because she got kicked off, but yeah, Cassante. But I mean, sure.
By the best legendary in the
Yeah,
game.
by the best
Right?
legendary in the game.
Mhm.
So yeah, why don't you talk
Yeah.
about this Velvet change?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, for sure. So the goal here was just to hit the ceiling, like you said, of those best items in the game. Like if you're going through fights where like you hit a 2-star Bel'Veth, obviously you're really happy about it. But if you go through fights where like she's not even proccing GA, Edge of Night, that's not really what we want. Like we want her to be killable. Um, with the right setup, obviously, like she should pop off. But if people actively try to counter you, we want her to like have counterplay. And so for that, we're trying to slow her down a little bit. This is basically just hitting that ceiling, these changes. And so you can definitely make a very solid argument that there's a mistake here and it's not buffing her floor a bit. I think that's like super reasonable to say. But overall, and this is not extending past Bel'Veth, we would like if this Dragon King, this Bill Gates board, this legendary soup, whatever you want to call it, we would like it if it wasn't always the best board in the game because it's like really frustrating to just load into a game, see it's like scuttle puddle, somebody got level up, and you're just like, oh well, I'm playing for second now.
Mm-hmm.
And Bel'Veth is a key component on those boards. Whether these outraged players at high low, I don't think anybody's really outraged, but whether people want to admit it or not, Bel'Veth a lot of the time is a key player on these boards, along with like Ari and Heimer,
Mm-hmm.
and like Sion. So I think that the ceiling nerf was necessary. It's possible that she might need a little bit of compensation somewhere else, but again, we just want to see how it plays out. I mean, like I personally don't think this kills her. I don't know how you feel, but like I think she'll still be playable.
Personally, I don't know. I think the reason why I didn't actually like engage in the conversation too much about this one is just because like I think like I ran into a game against Setsuko in tournament where like you put 2 items on a Bel'Veth 1 and like she was already getting really really strong, and I don't think like if you buffed her floor, I don't think like I think she would still just be like a little bit too strong there, so I didn't like think you guys needed to buff her floor. I think like the one thing that's like a little bit iffy is just like this is like the one change. I think this change is fine. It's just like 20 to 15 at 1-star. Like I think 30 to 25 is like completely okay at 2-star. This is like a little bit iffy, but at the same time, like I got ran over by some Bel'Veth ones in my time as well. So it's like pretty much this is a change that I kind of want to see before anything. I know like I think like legendary soup or like ASO boards are a lot more of a threat at lower elos than at high elo.
Yeah.
People definitely can't do it at high elo right now. It's really hard, at least. So
Yeah, I think also like it's not it doesn't have to go without mentioning that Bel'Veth is essentially a threat. Like she's void, but that doesn't contribute to like her
oh, I
combat
see.
power by
Yeah.
herself.
Mhm.
So she has a lot of stats in a lot of places. Like she has a lot in her kit. So we do have a lot of levers. And we just want to toy around with a couple of those. Like we have like a framework in place, but with 5 costs, we can like bend the rules a little bit, which is why you see like 3-star, for example, didn't go down, but 1 and 2-star got hit.
Okay, cool.
Um, I mean, yeah. So like you said, like we just want to see it first.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Heimerdinger. So
Yeah.
this one's okay. So when I read repair, I think I read the patch notes this morning. When I read repair, like this, I thought this is like a weird change because like I feel like this is one of those changes where you're going to see like repair being really OP at like 2-star. I don't know if you guys changed. I don't think you guys did. Where like repair works with like cybernetic bulk and certain things like certain augments where like you actually get the HP. I think like that sounds like something that might be really 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 strong that like you won't see very often. But when you do, it's like okay, this turret is like what's going on here? Like this turret is unkillable,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
So I guess like
Yeah.
that's scary. I really have to like this is just one of those things where like you have to see it to just know. But yeah.
Yeah. So Heimer. There's been a lot of discussion internally about Heimer, like a lot.
Hmm.
Um, And so I'm not gonna again, like I'm not gonna leak like any of like Mort's thoughts or Ken's thoughts or anything like that. Here's how I feel: is we're kind of like, I don't want to say we're like borrowing from Peter to pay Paul here, but like okay, so let me outline the goal first. The goal is we don't want every Heimer player every single game to be Shrinko,
No,
Mechano,
Meccano, yeah.
like stuff like that. We want to make self-repair a little bit appealing because in the past it was 0 or 3. And like most recently it's been 0. So it's hopefully like a little bit appealing now. It's gonna give you more frontline. And then obviously you can see Mechano got nerfed a little bit from 7 to 5. My worry is that people will still just kind of chase the optimal and not like just to take what you can get kind of thing. Which might not be that bad, honestly, just because they're spending more gold on it. But the tricky part is he's a 23 gold unit right now, and he has to be treated like a 23 gold unit.
Oh, he's actually a lot more than 23 gold too.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's like I'm speaking in like a more reductive way for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean like I would like me personally, I would like to see him brought down in power more. Right now, I think we're just kind of readjusting him from here. Hopefully it makes him like at least a little bit more interesting to play around because I mean he is fun to play around. Like let's just be honest.
Yep.
But he's a little bit too ubiquitous and he does a little bit too much for that ubiquity. So
Yeah, I guess like my thoughts on Heimerdinger is that like me and Socks actually build Reparo probably more than like any high elo player, at least in North America. For one, it's really good against Noxus. I think that's like something people don't really think about. They're just like, oh, I need my Mechano Shrinko, you know. And like, don't get me wrong, like build Mechano Shrinko. We all know it's strong. But I think there are cases where you use Reparo. I don't think there are really cases where you use gold, frankly. I bought it, I tried it after the changes. I didn't think it was that good, especially since a lot of times you're playing Zeri as well. Like it's definitely not incongruent with like Zeri's kit where they both execute.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're talking about gold, by the way?
yeah, gold.
Okay.
So like I still think like you're probably not gonna find too many scenarios where you're playing around gold. I think Mechano nerfs. I think like just a straight nerf. I think everybody's still gonna go Mechano for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I think so. I think this is
Yeah,
just
I
a
mean
good change.
we just wanted to not be able to access the backline as easily, which was like the goal here. If anybody's watching and it's like you're not sure what the importance of 7 to 5 is it essentially narrows the cone whenever he fires. So it's gonna hit the backline a lot less, and it's still gonna be able to affect the front line.
Mhm. I think this is interesting just for like how like it changes positioning around him. Like I think we figured out early on that you just put him like dead center in the middle, and he just like hits the two corner units if they don't have like 7 units in the front line, which obviously most comps won't. Yeah, so like I think that's gonna be interesting to play around. I really do think Reparo is playable, but I mean this is gonna have to wait and see. I do have a question about Heimerdinger. You know obviously I'm not on the team, so I'm going to assume that he's going to be in the next set. Obviously you can't confirm that, but like assuming he is, like, or like I guess like throughout this set as well, like were you guys ever open to like changing his gold? Not his gold thingy, his gold upgrade, just like changing his
Like
gold from like
upgrades?
6 to 5, yeah, for example, like making
Yeah, I
it
mean
cheaper so you can like play with his power level more.
that's definitely reasonable. I mean that is one of the levers that we have in play where it's like, obviously we have the actual tuning numbers, but the good thing about having units like this, where it's like the mercenary set 3 types, it's like the same kind of thing, is we can affect his price, and that in turn like will give us more leverage on, the areas we can balance him in. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely something that we can do something with. We haven't yet, but I'm not gonna say it's off the table.
Okay. Yeah, and just like very like quickly for people watching, just in case like people are wanting to wonder like why I'm not saying he's like a 23 gold unit. Oftentimes he's a lot more than that, just because rolling for his upgrades is a cost that's like very very real. Like say you need a Mechano, for example, like oftentimes like you can roll as much as like 12 gold or like I mean you can roll as much as infinite gold, but like you can roll a lot of gold and not see that first Mechano, which means that you're paying a lot of gold for which is what is essentially Dinger. Obviously your rolls have value in other ways, like obviously you can still hit units, but like if you really need that Mechano, then like that price needs to be factored in some way, shape, or form, right? So okay, moving on to Ryze. I don't think this Ionia Ryze matters all that much. I think it's just a strict nerf, which is good. I think the
Oh
Ionia
no,
Ryze
I mean
very
this
obviously
is
strong.
yeah, well, like yeah, it's a nerf at the lower levels, but it's also like okay, never mind. I thought you were talking about the 3 star. I was like, yeah,
No, for
the goal for 3 star is like deal less damage, so you can appreciate like the actual effect.
having a 3-star 5 cost, yeah.
Yeah, because you don't. I mean, like the fight just ends otherwise, which is like kind of boring.
Okay. Piltover Ryze 2. Okay, so I thought Piltover Ryze 1... I'll talk about Bandle City in a sec. Piltover Ryze
Sure.
1 I thought needed a buff. Piltover Ryze 2, interestingly, does a good amount of damage, especially in the 6 Invoker comp. I don't know how much like the 6 Invoker comp actually factors into you guys like balancing Ryze, because obviously that's like the Ryze's like optimal scenario, where like he's just firing all over the place, like, right?
It definitely does factor in, yeah. I think that the goal for I mean, you might not like hearing this, but the goal for the Rises in particular is we do want him to we want him to be a fun legendary because he's like our like cool, unique legendary of the set. Like there's like 10 of them, right?
Yeah.
And we want it to be appealing, and we want it to at least be like somewhat of a choice if you have like a 2-star Rise and like a 2-star Ari, and you can like you want to be able to like sort of make an argument for itemizing either one, right? And a lot of the time, as you know, this is like a no-brainer. So
Yeah. Okay. Bandle City Rise. So actually, okay. So this is like what I want to talk about because like now when you have
yeah.
Rise 2 and you say you keep like the optimal scenario is gonna be like you keep like 2 Scions on your bench, right? And then you just pull them 2
Yeah.
Scion 2s, and it's like if your team has 2 extra Scion 2s, I mean that's very very scary. So like what's going on here?
Yeah,
I don't
I
actually
mean,
think that's strong, by the way, but I'm willing to see.
no, yeah,
Just curious.
I get you. So this is this is a huge buff to like a massive buff to the ceiling, right?
Yeah,
Nobody is
yeah,
debating that.
yeah.
If you're level 9 in like a 6 Invoker comp and you hit a Rise 2, like you're going to be insanely strong if you can roll for stuff. Like maybe like a 2-star Cassante, for example. Oh man.
Oh my,
Anyway, I mean that's actually,
it's good.
that's
It's
actually one
good.
of those that is going to be good.
Yeah, because he gets
Um,
full mana.
yeah, but okay, so yeah, all jokes aside, the goal here was we want to make it so, like in the past, these units that pull in, like Syndra for example, set 8, Syndra 1, Syndra 2, was there much of a difference there? Like, not that much, right?
I think
Um,
Syndrome maybe, but like Thresh definitely not back in
but
set
it's
3.
not, like you're not like what am I trying to say? Like you're not like desperation rolling for Syndra 2
Yeah,
because it's been a huge spike your board.
yeah.
But like Rise 2 is going to be like really, really appealing in chase here. It's going to be a big difference. There's cause for concern here in a lot of players that we saw talking amongst themselves, where it's like, Bandle City has 2 of the best, or really 3 of the best like econ portals with Yumi's Zoom Zone, which lets you push 9 really quickly, with Scuttle Puddle, which is just like extreme econ, and then Yordle portals, which is like probably the most innocuous out of all of them, but still like you can get to 9 like fairly consistently in that galaxy,
Yeah.
or excuse me, in
That's a
that
lot of
portal.
gold.
Yeah. And so we're moving Yordle portals over to Noxus now, like we mentioned earlier. So that's 1 less econ. Um, and we're trying to basically just make it an exciting out. At 2-star, no one's denying it's going to be really strong, but at 1-star, it's like it's going to be the same thing. So yeah,
Yeah, I think like as a splash, this is gonna be really really strong. Like, I mean, you're splashing a 2-star legendary, but like I think like in the 6 Invoker comp, I'm not actually as worried about this one. Like, yeah, you're putting in a bunch of garbage or like a bunch of like good stuff, but it's like I don't know. Like, I think that comp doesn't actually struggle with frontline, but like if you put this on like for example level 9 boards now, I feel like the power level like goes through the roof, right? Because like you will not be able to get through a frontline when Ryze is just like spawning J42s and stuff like that. But
it is very possible.
yeah, so that's probably where I'm worried about this is like if you randomly have a Rise 2, it's like one of those units that can like completely fix like a problem with your board that you can't otherwise fix that easily. Like, right? Like you don't have that
Yeah,
much front line, but if you hit a Rise 2 in Bandle City, then I mean you have all the front line that you'll ever need, right?
yeah.
Okay, moving on. Okay, this one I'm just personally surprised about. Zaun Ryze nerf. I thought this Ryze kind of sucked after the changes. And he wasn't particularly like all that good before the changes either, but
Yeah. I mean, this is just like trying to nerf like the super burst capability where we want them to still be exciting and we want players to still be able to like chase those crazy gold amounts, but if you have this Rise, like I mean, I know what you call him, but I will call him, you have pretty solid utility, and we want to just make sure that like good utility and good burst damage doesn't come out like right in the beginning of the fight. I don't think this nerf is like that huge personally, but yeah.
mhm. Okay, Targon Rise. Okay, I mean this Rise sucks, so I'm happy to see him buffed.
Okay.
Sorry, this Rise is not very good. Um, This is one of those ones where like I think you guys changed really early on, right? Just because
Yeah. He was, I mean,
he was
early on he was
scary.
quite overkitted.
Yeah,
Like
he just was
he
doing too
did what
much.
he did what he does now, and he also stunned whatever he like slammed
Dropped
down,
on, yeah.
right? Yeah. So he lost a lot of power in losing the CC. He got some of it back just by him being able to cast more often. But he hasn't been so impactful. And Targon uh is a region where you have like a lot of opportunity to play Ryze as
For play
well.
Rise, yeah, because it's a lot of like
So
triple prismatic stuff like that. Oh wait, no, no, it's
yeah,
Stimmy
no, well
and
that's yeah, Stimmy, yeah.
yeah.
And then also like the duplicator stage.
Mhm.
So we do want to make him like pretty exciting. Um, not really much else to say. I agree that he was underperforming. So we just wanted to bump him up a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, Scion, just like a strict, like he doesn't have as much HP. Very good.
Yeah,
Senna, this
this
is a
guy's annoying.
probably like this is probably necessary, and it's also probably like an important one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those units where you can put her on your board, and you're just a lot stronger. And something that I think like a lot of lower elo players never talk about, and I think even high elo players you won't see talking about it too much, is the fact that Senna has like hidden synergies with some of these like augments. The most notable one being combat caster, but also defensive dash.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what else. I think that there might have been one more, but like that becomes really really strong with Senna. Like your units just start going into Super Saiyan like hella quick. Because like the
Yep.
more you cast more obviously with the attack speed, and yeah. So this is just a good change to me.
Yep. Just trying to kind of all around nerf her so she's not like as godly, pretty much.
Yeah, and finally, I guess we can wrap it up with some of these augments. I think like some of them we don't really have to talk about. Ascension, just quick buff, sure. Challenger Crown, I imagine it's just because like Yasuo no longer uses RC.
Well, we meant to do this before. It
Oh,
just kind of got yeah, it just didn't go through. So this was actually meant to happen this patch.
oh, okay. Dueling Gunners, okay, this augment has not been that good. I'm actually surprised. I thought it was decent, but apparently it's actually really bad. I'm not, yeah, so
Yeah.
good change. And this Hordes, you guys split the 3-2 and 4-2, which I think is cool. I think this is good. I mean, I think Endless Hordes at 3-2 is really good. I think Endless Hordes at 4-2 is like really situational, and even in the situations where it is good, it's like kind of mid. So I think
Yep.
these are good. Okay, freaking Flyer. Yeah, I don't know how. I actually took this augment recently, and I saw Bryce take it as well. It actually catches up with Rich Get Richer Plus, which is I've mentioned in the past is like the standard for like these types of augments, or like any gold augment, any econ augment should be compared to Rich Get Richer Plus, because if it's worse than Rich Get Richer Plus, that means it's like for sure worse. It's for sure not viable. At least like at high elos. I think this probably pushes the threshold to like it being definitely usable now. So pretty good, I think.
I would argue more poignant comparison would probably be Silver Ticket. That is the gold augment, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the goal here was just to, like you said, break even with other econ augments and make it appealing, because 10 rolls can be a lot when, unless you're playing like a one cost reroll, in which case like you reroll a lot on like 3-1 anyway.
Yeah.
But for other play patterns, especially if you're getting a 3-2, 10 rolls can be a lot. So just want to make it a little bit easier to access. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Haunted Shell. I don't even know what this does, I'm gonna be honest.
Whenever your units die, they get resistances. This might not be like the best direction to go for the shape, but we do want to just try like bumping up the base augment a little bit just to see. The idea here is like hopefully you can play Shadow Isles comp, and if your stuff starts to die off, you can have like the 1v9 type thing at the end of the fight.
Okay, I don't think this is gonna be very good, but we'll see. Okay, this is a good change. Late game specialist level up. I think a lot of us have been yapping about this one. I mean, like it just makes it so late game specialist doesn't even have a cost, right? If you have level up. So
Yeah, we want to make it so that like right now we do have to balance late game specialist around level up, and we want to make it so that it can not be as bound to that on.
Mm-hmm. Mana burn re-enabled, sure. Not much to say about that.
Yeah.
Parting gifts, shield is now added. Wait, what does this mean?
So this essentially means so the strat commonly when you get parting gifts is like, do I have a ZZ right? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, I can take this augment. No. Okay, I'm not taking this augment.
Yeah. Okay.
But now, it'll if you have like a Warmogs, for example, it'll give you a bigger shield. So,
oh, okay.
It's just to try and make it work with like more
Slightly
items,
more items,
essentially.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Warmogs is like the other one where it's like it's pretty good. Zizufron's
Yeah.
obviously like the super hero case, but Warmogs is like it's worth considering. Whereas like maybe outside of Vow, the other items aren't even worth considering.
It is pretty hard to use. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this augment's straight up broken if you have ZZ
Oh
Rot.
really?
If you have ZZ
Oh,
Rot,
was easy route. Oh yeah. I mean, Dark Flight. Like.
yeah, Dark Flight. Um, Perfected Repetition. This is just more multi-caster buffs.
Yeah.
Hard to know. I mean, this is like something you just have to try. But yeah. Okay, this is the big one. It's time. It's fine. It's finally time. It's finally time. Ornn is being nerfed.
You know how many there are so many complaints about this.
Yeah.
Which is surprising to me.
I'm not
I mean,
surprised.
I don't know
I
how
had
you
some
feel,
complaints.
but I feel like we nerfed Tricksters, we buffed Zhonya's, we nerfed DD slightly because it's niche, but like in those niches it's like insanely good.
Yeah. Okay, I think just on the topic of
Yeah,
DD real quick, you'll see it later, but the DD Titans interaction probably needs to be removed, in my opinion. For the reason is that like I know we like cool and fun interactions in TFT. Like I think there's an element of that there, and I think it's valuable.
Oh, the one where it stacks really fast?
Yeah, you just stack in like 1 second. I think the reason why that's not that like it's fun, sure, but like I don't think it's like necessary just because like anytime you build DD, the best item is Titans regardless of that interaction, right? In my opinion. Like when you're building BT on any unit, I'd say like 75 to 80% of the time Titan is going to be like a best in slot item, right? And that's just like the nature of BT, the nature of DD. Is that so if that is the case, then like I don't think like the Titans DD combo needs to be like pushed even further by like having that interaction in the game. But I don't know, maybe you feel differently about that.
No, I mean I think that's definitely a reasonable point. Yeah, I mean we can definitely have more conversations about that. But yeah, I mean as for I was curious though as to your opinion overall on these portable forge changes, the 234.
Yeah, I mean I think like this is just a consistency nerf more than anything. I know like the like I don't know. I gave it some thought, but like I've already made my swap in Legends, so like it matters to me less.
Mentally?
Oh no, yeah, I'm swapping to Earth. I don't think you guys nerfed it, so I'm swapping to
Gotcha.
Earth. I'm already out of here.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I played Ornn 500 games, so I'm happy to see Ornn get nerfed, so I don't have to play Ornn anymore. But what do I think about this?
I mean,
I don't know. You guys are nerfing Tricksters, which is good.
Yeah.
But I think like consistency nerfs are always iffy, right? Like, cause like the argument you're gonna see a lot, you're gonna read a lot, and you're gonna hear a lot is like, okay, why nerf the consistency when you can just balance the Ornn items? But obviously, balancing the Ornn items is not that easy, and also balancing the Ornn items is not as simple as like 2-1 balancing the Ornn items. Because like as much as like I would tell you, I'd be the first one to tell you 3-2 and 4-2 Ornn don't even exist. They do exist, and people do take them. And there's also an Ornn Galaxy, or an Ornn Portal, I mean. And there's also, like, Ornn 4-2, which gives you an Ornn Augment, and Ornn 3-2, which gives you an Ornn Augment, the prismatic ones, that aren't Forge. Obviously, those aren't being hit by this. So, yeah, I don't think, like balancing the Ornn items is not a job that, like, I would want, because I think it's really tough. So, I think, like, the people saying, oh, you guys can't balance Ornn items, so, like, you guys are doing this, and I think that's probably why they're getting mad at you. I don't know. This was actually suggested in the past because Ornnforge on 2-1 has always been one of the best augments in the game, like in the history of TFT. And it's always been like mediocre on 3-2 and 4-2. So like this kind of like gives you a lever to make it a little bit better. Like I can even see it being 2-3-5, by the way. Probably holding off on that for now is fine, but yeah.
There are less like so just to, along that really quick, like Radiant Relics is 5 and there are like substantially less Ornn items than Radiant Relics, so
I guess yeah, when it's like 5 you probably just like almost always get one of the two you want.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think that you're probably right in a lot of your assessments here. What I will say is like, you know, for anybody watching who might feel similarly aligned to like what guubums was saying is I think that like everybody who obviously wants to complain about the game is like totally like feel free to do so. Like like complaints are valid. Nobody's gonna stop you from complaining about the game. But I think that there is like a certain amount of trust that we need to build. And like, you know, somebody like Mort, for example, has already built that trust with a lot of people. But like somebody like me, I'm really new and I haven't built that trust yet. And so, seeing things like, oh, they can't balance the Ornn items, it's like, there are people around me who have been doing this for like so much longer, and they're so much better at this than me that like, don't worry, we can definitely balance the Ornn items, but we do want them to be exciting. And nerfing the consistency is like is an avenue to make them still exciting and like to still have them be like, oh holy shit, I just hit like the anima visage when I have like this Warmog Swain or something like that. Like, these kinds of moments. Without it just like being seen every single game. Um, and so like when you have like a complex problem like this, like and you see a simple solution that's not being implemented, you either reconcile this with being okay, well maybe the solution isn't actually this simple, or there's some kind of like secret force at work that is like working against us, which is like this is also like just true in general, which is why like a lot of the time discussions about like simple solutions often interface with like conspiracy theories. But yeah, I'm kind of going off track, but basically, yeah, like we can definitely address Ornn items as needs be. We just want to keep a level of excitement in the game. We want to keep like fun and high roll moments in the game, and we also want things to not be like stale, as in like 500 games of Ornn. This is basically the short story.
Yeah, I guess like the follow-up question to this is gonna be like how will you guys like respond to criticism of saying like using this as the example of like okay, Legends are like a failure, right? Because like I don't think this change is being made if Legends didn't exist. I probably concede that. I personally, my opinions on Legends, like I'm completely okay with them. But yeah, like do you have any like response with that type of criticism?
Oh yeah, I mean, I obviously can't speak on like company values or anything. I'm just gonna speak on my own personal values, and we touched on this on Don't Talk If You Don't Know podcast. But like as a player, I like Legends. I like the idea of Legends, and I think that the most important thing is that new players like Legends,
Yeah.
and they're a good way of onboarding into the game. Because it's like you can read about what stuff does. It's very outlined for you, just in case you don't want to like have to super stress about like what you're taking and stuff like that. Like newer players can definitely just click left, 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 and they can still have a fun time. Um, so I think in that aspect, Legends are like really great. They're like, and I'm not gonna deny like obviously there are Legends that like there are some problems with them. And one of them being like, for example, like Aurelion. Uh, I think that like this like it's not so much like Aurelion is a problem, but it's like notifying us that the consistency of level up, for example, could be a problem if we offer it in its current state all the time. So then the question becomes like, does level up need a nerf? Does it need a rework? Stuff like that. So we're like constantly thinking about these things. But as far as Legends go, like, I mean, you can say they're terrible for the game. You can say we can delete them, but the fact of the matter is that they are just objectively really good for new players, and even like skilled players and veterans and stuff, there are a good few people that enjoy them as well. So, I mean, I'm again not going to comment on anything like company wide or anything. It's just my own personal opinion. I think they're fine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, so I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. Okay, Rift Walk, slight nerf. I'm surprised this got nerfed. I thought like this was fine after the cast of nerfs, but any
Yeah.
comments here?
He looked really good in the data.
Oh, interesting.
I like that. That's pretty much all. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Return on investment, similar thing to what we previously talked about with Freaking Flyer. It's just you weren't getting it. Like it was too expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this puts it in a lot more reasonable range now.
Yeah. Pays to learn. It's just like a slight nerf. Oh, I'm surprised. I'm surprised the silver got nerfed. I thought actually only the gold and prismatics were problematic. I obviously the silver is getting nerfed by like slightly less, but even from a percentage standpoint. But
so silver was still quite good. Yeah, we just want to make sure that you at some point when you play ASOL, like you probably should have to play the game. Like, yeah. So
yeah, okay.
Slight nerf to that.
Shimmering Inventors. Okay, when I saw this change, I didn't like it, just because. Okay, I mean we both agree. We both agree that Shimmering. No, like I'm kind of like trying to separate my thoughts from like how I feel about Piltover.
Okay, sure.
Obviously you can't with a trait like this, but like the way I see this augment is everybody's only taking this as Echo Heart. You get +1 Echo, which gives you 1/3 of Piltover, so you take it. But the reason why I like the Italian speed more is that like I actually think there's like some sort of identity if you make it to Dinger and like then the augment kind of starts doing something. Just because Dinger like hard scales off attack speed. I don't think this bonus damage affects his turret. It wouldn't be consistent with how his turret works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So,
hmm?
oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say like.
I didn't realize you were saying.
Oh, I was gonna say like I don't think like this actually is relevant to like Jason Echo. Maybe like I guess maybe it's somewhat relevant to Echo, but like I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, so this is like a directional thing where we want. So like right now, it's like completely irrelevant to Jason Echo.
Yeah, it's completely irrelevant.
And Vi obviously.
Oh, okay. I didn't even bother talking about that, but yeah.
Yeah, so we want people to at least think about, I get this augment, like, oh, maybe I should carry the Piltover units instead of like, all right, nice, I got an Echo. Now I'm getting some gold per round. Sweet, time to play Zeri. We wanted to at least be like, maybe it's a unique way that you can play around these units.
Echo 3,
do the numbers need to go up from here? Like, it's possible. It's definitely possible. But, this is more of a directional thing than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would take this and be like, it's a work in progress. Obviously, Echo 3 is not good right now. If it was better, or maybe like, I don't know, if Piltover, sticks around for the following set, the 0.5 set, like, maybe it's like not Echo anymore. Like, once again, for people watching, I have know nothing, and he's not going to confirm anything for me. So like, if it wasn't Echo, then maybe like someone else could use it better. Obviously, Echo was like a little bit unhealthy when he was strong at 3-star for obvious reasons. So I can see it definitely being good as a directional change, but just like in practice, how it's used, it's like you remove, like for me, it's like you remove like the one case where you might actually see it being pretty good. Okay, I'm saying outside of Piltover spat, yeah, you can get a Piltover spat and like, yeah, you have like the trait augment with the spat. It is rare, but yeah, I don't know. There's probably not. I shouldn't even probably talk about this one too much. It's not all that relevant of an augment, I guess. So.
I mean, I think it's possible that, Jason Echo can be good with this augment. I don't think we should discount the possibility.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not, then maybe it means the numbers need to go up. If they are, then good. If it's too good, which I mean, I doubt personally, but we can always nerf. So
yeah, I just figured just like it's a little bit like you don't need to maximize value to get value out of an augment, right? That is like something obviously that's like hard to reconcile with lower level players, but like you're just not gonna get 50 gold, so it's just like that's what makes it hard. It's like it's gated too much by like how much gold you have to keep in. It's the same problem with Zaun Ryze, right? Like I need to use this gold to make my board strong a lot of times.
This is also gold reserves. Like it's pretty much the same thing. So
was gold reserves good?
Yeah, it was good.
Oh, I don't even remember. I didn't play that set.
That was Sniper MF.
Wait, no, that augment was broken.
Yeah.
No, okay, that's his MF.
This is the exact same thing as gold reserves. It's just not on a Sniper MF because, well, I mean, Sniper MF is also like better.
Yeah, Sniper MF was actually like a really strong unit.
Yeah, but yeah, so this is that's the reason we wanted to open up carry path ability for some of these units.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Shurima's legacy.
Oh, this might be a little bit confusing to you actually. The only reason was like this augment still looked like pretty good in data in spite of the fact that Shurima itself was bad. So if we're buffing Shurima, we probably just want to like slight nerf this.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I mean this like I always knew this augment was good. I don't actually think I've taken it a single time, just because every time I'm offered it, I don't have the spot, but I know it's good. I mean like, I mean I made an augment tier list. This is my S tier, only on 2-1 obviously, but.
Yeah, it gets a lot better with like positioning and maxes as well.
Yeah, you can like cheese people's
I mean, you probably know that actually.
Yeah, you can cheese people's backlines. Yeah. I think it's a little bit dumb, but like whatever. Like it's niche enough that I don't care. But okay, boss, good change. I mean, this one especially. I mean, I think Kent talked about this in lobby too, but like the fact that he just gets grievous. He's so slow. He doesn't come back in time. But yeah, this is good.
So, I do want to touch on this because there are people who are concerned about this because they think that the boss is like the best hero augment in the game already, and it's also like they think it's just really good.
It's okay.
Like likes and dislikes that I have about this. The like is like we want it to be appealing, we want it to be like cool and fun, like hero augments in general. Just like different ways to play the game are fun, right? Like you don't like follow the same pattern that you do every game. Like this opens up a unique path. We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
The thing that I kind of dislike is I think that so we want to move away from you take the boss and you just tempo set 2 to like fast 8 or fast 9. We want it to be like you can do that, but we want it to be like you can go for like set 3 and you can have this cool like 1v9 set. And I don't think this really does anything for that.
Yeah, sush.
Yeah. So people are saying it's already strong. It might be. Um, the one thing is like he technically might gain less attack speed and AP because he cleanses and like before when he's healing debuff, he's healing less because so he's like
Oh, so
doing
he's doing
more
more
sit-ups.
setups. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's like a weird trade-off that's like not going to be super consistent. I mean like now it's going to be consistent, but it's not going to be like super consistent in the variations of the damage and like bonuses that you see.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So we'll see.
Okay. I mean, I didn't know that this would actually be this would have to be something you guys actually have to keep your eye on, but I mean, I tried
Eh,
boss in scrims. I mean, I went 888, but like I only boss was only one of them, and I was like, I tried. I'm like, what is this? Like, I mean, I couldn't
yeah.
get to work personally, but I'm not gonna
It's
reroll it.
Yeah, it's really weird. I agree. I mean, it's like not like super, it's not as close as like Yasuo, for example, but it is something that's like,
Hmm.
maybe worth watching.
Yeah, too healthy. Okay, I think this is a good change. It's like a comp buff because like it got
Yeah,
nerfed, and it got
I got hit.
deservedly
Yeah.
nerfed over and over again because it was too strong. But I do agree with like slowly putting some of the power back. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that can go back up to 125 long term. I will have to
Yeah.
see with the Lux's ear comp because like obviously there's like the 2 cost comp where people start playing like 6 2 costs, and that's like
Yeah.
something. But like another thing is like if people play this in the Azir comp at 125 and you play 3, that's 375 HP for a gold. I mean that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot, right? So
It is. No, for sure. Especially when it's like you don't really have to deviate that much
right,
from
right.
the standard comp.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's not like a
that's the
huge
problem
trade-off.
for sure.
Yeah.
Is that when
So
you
yeah,
get
I mean this
123?
just basically opens up like, two healthy build diff or something, 2 cost reroll, as well as like the capabilities of it late game. Hopefully it's not over. I don't think it'll be that bad. It did need a bump up.
Hmm. Okay, what the Forge? You
This is
know
a big one.
that I've never once taken this augment, and I think it's horrible, but it is probably a fun augment for a lot of people, and I think this is probably a big deal for those people who like what the Forge.
Oh, I think so. Like I know your thoughts on it, but I actually think that this change makes it a lot more appealing.
Okay, so
No, like I really think that this increases the strength a lot, just because
no, I wasn't being
like
sarcastic. I was actually just
yeah, well,
okay.
like greater item diversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not gonna get like 3 eternal winters at the same time anymore, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, I don't know. I think this is a really good change.
Yeah, I think like for sure, like just for making the augment more clickable, this is for sure good. Just like you're minimizing like the turbo low roll scenarios. Like if you get like 4 winners, you literally just I mean you're just down you're down everything. Like you're not even just down
Yeah,
an augment, you're down everything. But I do think
yeah,
there is like obviously I've mean run this augment like to no end, saying it's like it's a 4-1 augment. But I do think there are worlds where you take this just because your items are looking doomed, and like it's like pretty much like clicking factory reset on your items for the hope that like you end up in a better spot than you started. And I think that's fine to have augments like that in the game. So, and I think this
yeah.
change obviously makes it a lot more appealing to run some of those. And
Mhm.
okay, I mean, this is probably going to be a last one. I'm not going to talk about like some of these. I think we are running a little bit long. I don't want to like take up that much of your time. But this is obviously a very big one. Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of high elo players think Shimmer is giga broken, and it probably is. But we both agree that like Shimmer is probably like one of everybody's favorite augment. Doesn't matter if you're high elo, low elo, or
Oh yeah,
anything. Like it's definitely super
absolutely.
fun. So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess these are like the final changes that we can go through.
Yeah, I mean, we're just like, there's not really a whole lot to say. Everything was overperforming. We
Hmm.
want to just kind of nerf everything down a little bit so that hopefully it's still enjoyable but less oppressive. Because yeah, I will freely admit that it was a miss on this patch. Like we tried to kind of readjust it, but it ended up just being, well, it's still like really broken anyway, and we're just gonna take this and go first a lot of the time.
Yeah,
And that's hyperbole, but like it feels that way a lot of the time. Like that
yeah,
is like you see somebody with 2-1
Shimmer.
shimmer, and you're like, well, what do I do now? You know?
Yeah, okay. I mean, like no, if the like they're all nerfs, so I mean, I'm happy to see them all nerfed. I'll see like pretty much this is one of those things where you just have to wait and see to see how good they are. Like I imagine most of them are still going to be pretty good, which obviously is like something you guys like. Like if
Yeah.
I think if this augments like a 4.5, that's probably a miss, just because of how fun it is. You don't want it to be like a 4.5. Like okay, so I think 4.5 is like when you get into like it's not that good territory. I know like technically speaking it's average, but like yeah. Anyways, Trix's Glass. This is a big one. I think like with Ornn being not the best legend anymore, probably at least in the eyes of a lot of people, it's gonna be like less relevant. But I think no matter what, this probably still had to be nerfed just in the sake of for the sake of like the portal as well as like obviously the people who still play Ornn. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean I can just talk about this actually. So a lot of things that like something that like people in my opinion took like way too long to figure out is that on first patch Tricksters was probably nearly as broken as the two Giga broken ones, which were obviously Winter and Sniper's Focus. But the thing
I
is,
told you this, by the way. I said this.
well, you said this, but Socks actually figured it out. I mean, I didn't figure it out. Socks figured it out, and he told me, and I
Yeah.
didn't believe him for a while. But he like we started putting it on backliners, and it's like this thing is so strong. But people keep
Yeah.
putting it on their like upgraded frontliner, thinking it'll do anything. It's like it doesn't cast. But like the thing is, like most
J4
units,
Tricksters, Pog.
yeah, it's like J4 Tricksters is like okay. The thing is, like your main J4, especially at 1 star, doesn't even cast like a lot all the time. So like, what makes you think your Trickster's J4 with like 20% less HP, 20% more mana is gonna cast? Like most of the time, it wasn't casting. You could get it to cast interestingly enough by having like an itemized J4 2 to like jump in there first with like Vow, and then
Yeah.
so that the other one can have time to cast. But like
Yeah, and
realistically,
staggered a little bit.
yeah, it's much better on backliners. And once people started figuring it out, then we saw like Tricksters being really ridiculous, right? Like Tricksters
Yeah.
Kalista. This patch, the big one is Tricksters Samira, to the surprise of no one. Tricksters like legendaries was really strong, like Trickster Senna, Trickster certain Rises was really strong. Trickster
Yeah.
Scion is like the exception, one of the exceptions to the rule, because like it doesn't even matter if he dies, he's still like giving your team a lot of HP. So like yeah, this had to come down for sure. I mean, it's just a straight up nerf across the board. I'm happy with it. I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys are okay with this as well. And okay, so Zanya's is actually something that I'm a little bit concerned about because people who played set 8 know the terror of Zanya's, or people who've played TFT in the past know the terror of Zanya's. This item has
Yep.
bounced from like completely unviable, like completely unclickable to like completely bonkers broken multiple times throughout TFT because like every time it's like really broken, they just keep having to nerf it. Oftentimes it has to do with the number of users in the set, obviously, right? Um, so this is actually being buffed to near its like peak power in set 8 when it was like 50. Oh no, sorry, this is just the ability power then. Oh, I
Yeah.
misread it. Okay, so it's not the other two stats. Okay, that's not that bad. All right,
Yeah.
I'm not mad.
I was getting ready to say something, but yeah, no, you're
Yeah,
right.
okay, that's not
Um,
that bad then. Whatever, this is probably
yeah,
blink.
the one problem is like this item is niche, and we're increasing the power in the niche areas where it's like already good. Which is like, that is fine. That's totally fine because
Yeah,
we
I think
do
this
want it
change
to
is
be
fine.
appealing.
Yeah,
But it's possible that it maybe needs something else, but like not every Ornn item has to be ubiquitous, so it's like I'm okay with it.
yeah, I agree. I think like being able to like pick this up when you need it is gonna be more important because like once again, like I think that 4-2 Ornn change is actually gonna make it so that like you're not completely opposed to taking Ornn 4-2. So like
Yeah.
this is obviously this item goes without saying. It's like it tends to be stronger in the late game than early game. Um, so yeah, I think like this is just like you might see more cases like people taking it on Gwen, for example, right? Like you're not gonna take this on 2-1 and play for Gwen, but like if you have a Gwen and you take this, then it's gonna be more appealing, right?
Yep, definitely.
All right. Yeah, I think that's gonna be the rundown from us. I don't want to take up too much of your time, like I said. Obviously, thank you for doing this with me. Hopefully, it helps with I guess like people's concerns about certain changes and certain the lack thereof different other changes. Otherwise, yeah, I think this is it for me. So if you like the content, please like and subscribe and comment for anything else you want to see. Thank you to Iniko.
Yeah.
And yeah, do you want to like
Thank you for
show
having
yourself
me.
out or do your own
Oh
shoutouts?
yeah. I mean that's really all I was gonna say is, thanks for having me. Trying to wrap up the set strong these last few patches. Hopefully everybody has a good mid set patch as well. And yeah, thanks everybody for playing and having fun.
All right, peace out.